So can everybody see the screen? Yes. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
But you could remove the banner by, let's see, someone looking at the banner, which because we don't need to see all of this, only the screen itself.
Let me see.
Lisa, you just need to put it in slideshow view. If you do slideshow from beginning all the way to your left, you'll be good.
There you go. Perfect.
Thank you. So again, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be invited to speak with you. It's great to know that there are so many people in our community that are interested in learning more about the manner in which we're providing indigent defense in this county. It's been my privilege to lead the program for the last couple of years and to be leading it during a time of great change for the improvement of services to our indigent community. So I feel like I've just been very lucky with regard to the time at which I came in and took over the program. We have a very supportive county management team. Our board of supervisors, our county manager's office are all very supportive and encouraging of providing the best indigent representation that we can. So with regard to the right of representation, I'm just going to start at the very beginning. So prior to a case that was decided by our U.S. Supreme Court in 1963, Gideon versus Wainwright, there was no actual right to have court-appointed counsel or to have any counsel at all to represent you in a criminal case. And so prior to this decision, people were expected to go into court on their own and present their case, make opening statements, find witnesses, call witnesses, cross-examine the state's witnesses, depending on what the evidence against them was. They might find themselves having to cross-examine a criminal analyst, things that are daunting tasks for even the most experienced of lawyers. And so when this individual, Clarence Gideon, had the commitment to himself to push and convince the court, he continued to push to the court saying that, he really needed a lawyer. He wanted to have a trial. He wanted to call witnesses. And he asked that the court appoint a lawyer to assist him so that he could do the best job. And the court refused repeatedly. So he went through his trial. He did his best. And, he presented his arguments and his witnesses, and he was convicted, not surprisingly. But while he was serving his term of imprisonment, he continued to appeal this. And his crime was, I believe he had been convicted of a burglary, going into a pool hall and creating some kind of disturbance. Not the most serious of crimes, but he was sent to prison for it. And while there, he continuously appealed and sought to have the court recognize that he shouldn't have been forced to go into court on his own, unprepared, and really, without the proper education and without the proper skill set to present the best case for himself. So it became a case of great interest. A lot of very notable individuals became involved in submitting briefs to the court, amicus briefs. And it became quite an important case. And the U.S. Supreme Court luckily came down on the side of Mr. Gideon and indicated that, yes, we should not be forcing people to fight for their own liberty. And, we have a presumption that you are presumed innocent unless proven guilty. And yet we are forcing these people with that presumption of innocence to go in and fight cases without being properly prepared and whatnot. So that began the right to have counsel represent you at a trial if you cannot afford to hire your lawyers. So Gideon versus Wainwright was critical for the creation then of indigent defense providers. So San Mateo County, recognizing that they were responsible for providing attorneys for the first couple of years after the decision, would grab attorneys out of the audience. If somebody came in charged with a criminal offense, the judge on the bench would look out into the audience and say, you know, Mr. Jones, I see you're here. You're an attorney. I'm going to appoint you to this case. And so here in our own county, that was the way it worked for several years, until there was a recognition that that really wasn't the appropriate way to provide representation either, because the attorney who got appointed in court, oftentimes it wasn't their field of practice. They weren't criminal lawyers. If they were criminal lawyers, they might have been appointed to a case that was beyond their skill set. They might not have been experienced enough to be put in the position of representing a very serious case. And so ultimately in 1968, the county sought proposals from different organizations to come in and offer plans as to how they would propose to provide indigent defense. And so the San Mateo County Bar Association was in existence at that time, and you know, has been a long, well-respected organization, and they sort of looked around at each other and said, we should come up with a plan, we should come up with a program and put in a proposal. And they did. So I'm told, I wasn't there back in 1968, but I'm told that they did not have the lowest proposal, but they made a proposal in which they emphasized that they would not be looking to just plead cases out. They said, we're not the lowest bid here, but that's because we don't intend to come in and just plead everybody guilty. We plan to come in and use resources to represent people and take their cases to trial. And surprisingly, because you think that in a lot of those situations, they will go with the lowest bid, but fortunately in this county, they did value the quality argument, and they went with the County Bar Association, and they have held the contract for indigent defense since 1968. So this county has never had any other program providing indigent defense in our county. Something that is interesting about our county is the model of our program is different than a lot of other public defender offices. So most of the counties in the state of California do have an institutional public defender's office, and that's an office that's established by the county, overseen by the county, and that is different from our model. We are a model that is oftentimes characterized as a managed assigned counsel program. And what that essentially means is that we have a management team that runs the program through the use of independent contractors. And so the reference to the 115 lawyers, those are 115 lawyers who are in private practice with an emphasis on providing excellent criminal defense. So we have some of the best lawyers in the county that are doing criminal defense on our panel. We have lawyers who, if they were charging clients privately and they were doing the type of work that they also do for our program, you know, they could be making hundreds of thousands of dollars on the private representation of people. And yet they value the importance of being part of the indigent defense world, and they value the work, and therefore they make a substantial part of their practice taking cases from our program. So what our actual management team consists of is myself as chief defender. So I oversee all the operations. I oversee everything from the budget, the contract negotiations, the hiring, you know, pretty much everything that the program involves. I have a bird's eye view and oversee. I then am fortunate to have two managing attorneys. Scott Sherman is the managing attorney in the adult division. So that is the division for all the cases for individuals 18 and up who are charged with criminal offenses. And then Ron Reyes manages the juvenile division, and that is for individuals 17 and younger. Ron also manages the dependency unit within our program, and dependency is a separate area that involves representing children and parents where there are familial situations where the CPS has gotten involved, the courts have gotten involved, and we provide representation to all parties in those cases as well. They're not criminal, but they are overseen by Ron, and several of our lawyers who do dependency also do delinquency work. So historically, the program management was really just the chief defender and an assistant chief defender. The reason there is not an assistant chief defender listed on this slide is because my assistant chief defender retired. So he retired a couple of months ago, and I'm about to start the hiring process to look for his replacement. I gave it a little bit of time because we did grow our management team, and I wanted to see if maybe we had enough of us to cover all the areas that needed to be covered. But with the growing, you know, area that is criminal defense law, it is my intention to hire an assistant chief so that we can expand our ability to both provide oversight, mentorship, training, and also work on other system expansions. So this year I hired 3 new positions, and they are listed here as assistant managing attorneys. So Mitri Hanania, he is an attorney that is a former panel attorney. He was on our panel probably for 20 plus years. I've known Mitri for a long time, have great respect for his professionalism, for the manner in which he conducts himself, the way he handles his clients. He's a very empathetic, caring individual who I know also through the years of watching him is very interested in helping to mentor. He's participated in our Stanford Mills Clinic arrangement, in which we have Stanford law students come in and take cases from us twice a year. And Mitri was very active in that program, and he showed a real interest in mentorship. So I hired Mitri, and I put him in charge of our newest lawyers up to our mid-level serious, like mid-felony serious lawyers. So he is responsible for, as I've said before, mentoring them, supporting them with good trainings, watching them in court to ensure that what he's seeing in court is consistent with the standards that we hold the lawyers to with regard to spending time with their clients, explaining their cases to them, as they're progressing in court, being professional in court. So Mitri is the managing attorney that does most of the supervision, training, supporting, mentoring of our newer lawyers. He is also responsible for our post-conviction unit. And post-conviction is an area that has grown quite a bit in the last couple of years. The laws have changed to make it much more favorable for individuals who are serving incredibly long sentences or serving sentences based on enhancements or allegations that were deemed at some point inappropriate, and you can seek relief to have those removed. So Mitri is responsible for managing our post-conviction work, which is quite voluminous. And then he is also the head within the office of our DEI efforts. So he is responsible for seeking out trainings and recruiting practices to further the effort to diversify and just put into place the principles that are involved in the diversity, equity, and inclusion mindset. So moving on to Nicole Lambros. Nicole was a very experienced homicide attorney that came to us from Santa Cruz and Santa Clara. She was handling some of our most serious homicides and sex cases. And I had approached her and talked to her about coming on and joining the team because I saw her in court and I saw the way that she went in prepared for her cases, the arguments that she was able to make, the feedback from the courts that I was getting. She was receiving very high praise for her performance and her representation. The other lawyers that worked with her either on co-defendant cases or just being in the courtroom when they saw her were all extremely complimentary of her representation. And so that's why I had approached her and asked her if she would come onto the team. I would put her in charge of the mid-level felonies up to the most serious capital cases, and ask her to be responsible for developing trainings and, again, mentorship opportunities. So Nicole, since she's joined us, she has organized several roundtables where attorneys can bring in very serious cases that they're working on, and they can sit around a table and talk about the facts and different experts that might be useful in the case, and get feedback on whether other lawyers have used those experts, and just kind of brainstorm about different approaches. Nicole has also been tasked with a project that is very near and dear to my heart, and I have been thinking about this since I took over the role. One of the things that I think that our system continues to lack is early representation. And so my goal is to eventually convince the county that they should be providing lawyers to give legal advice to individuals from the time of arrest. People are Mirandized and they're told they're entitled to a lawyer, and if they can't afford one will be provided. But the fact is, people aren't given lawyers, and people who can't afford lawyers at that point in time oftentimes make statements and do things that end up harming their case. So people who can't afford a lawyer, oftentimes because they're unprotected and they don't have anybody there to advise them, they make statements that are incriminating. They say things that they wouldn't say if they had a lawyer there to protect them and advise them. In our county at this point, we accept representation of individuals once they get to court. And so the first appearance in court is called an arraignment. And at the arraignment, you can fill out a form and request a court-appointed counsel. And that's when we take over or begin the representation of the case. So recently we scored a small victory in that the courts and the sheriff's office and the DA's office, everybody agreed to let us into court 30 minutes early before the arraignment calendar begins. So previously we were being allowed into the courtroom at the same time that the judge was getting ready to take the bench, and we were expected to conduct arraignments on, it could be up to 40 individuals whose cases we haven't had time to familiarize ourselves with release arguments to be made, but not having the appropriate amount of information to make those arguments. And so it's something I've been talking about to the county manager, to the presiding judge, to the sheriff's office. I met with the sheriff shortly after her election to tell her that it was important to me that we move toward a system in which we are given earlier access to individuals who've been arrested and need to speak to a lawyer. So we've made small progress, but we will take the small progress, hopefully demonstrate that it does lead to improved representation, and continue to push for more and more earlier access. So Nicole Lambros is in charge of that effort. She has been going over to the custody calendar each day herself and interviewing people. She created a form to identify issues such as mental health issues, substance use disorder issues, housing issues, immigration issues. So we essentially just go through the form and we try to get a little head start on what the problems this individual is facing might be as they go through the system. And we start to encourage the involvement of the appropriate team members on that case early on, so that we can get better results in the long run. Tanya O'Malley is a position that I'm very excited about. When I hired Tanya, I told her that I really had only intended to hire 2 managing attorneys, but I was so impressed with her interview and her knowledge in some particularly important specialty areas that I was going to create a new position for her. So Tanya's specialty areas really revolve largely around mental health issues. She had been carrying a caseload as one of our panel attorneys that involved a number of individuals who were struggling with mental health issues. She was, as a contract attorney, volunteering for the Homeless Connect Court. So she had already demonstrated a commitment to getting out and connecting with individuals in shelters and finding out what kinds of cases they had hanging over their heads, outstanding warrants, unpaid tickets, failures to appear in court. And because of this particular demonstrated interest in mental health and, assisting people with basic needs like housing and treatment, I created a new position, and Tanya is now the head of collaborative courts and community outreach. And she does our mental health court calendar once a week. And she does our Homeless Connect Court. Well, she did 2 this month. So we are setting them up as it works out for Life Moves. So we've coordinated with Life Moves to get some of their clients, and what they've indicated is they would like to start as they begin to fill up the navigation center to have her out there at least once a month. And then the other shelters, we hope, and she was out there this week, I think it was just yesterday, was able to gather information for 16 individuals who have outstanding fines and different issues that she will now be able to take to the judge and hopefully get all of that dismissed or reduced at the very least, and help out in that regard. So Tanya also attends a lot of the collaborative court meetings. I also attend quite a few of them too. I have a personal interest in the mental health issue that is plaguing this community. It's plaguing the system. There is a sort of alarmingly large population of people in our community who are suffering from mental health disorders, and unfortunately the jail is becoming the replacement for what would perhaps have been a commitment to the state hospital in years past, or to a treatment facility. And so it's just really important that people pay attention to the struggles of the clients, make sure that they're getting the medication they need, the attention and treatment that they need, that they're treated humanely, and as all have to be, and of course need to be. But the mental health population can be particularly vulnerable, and so our sheriff's office has done a good job in the creation of some units in the jail. Sorry, I just got distracted by the comments. And so I am proud that the sheriff's office is working to improve conditions. They have a behavioral health unit that is really well run. They have a doctor on staff. People can be assessed there in the jail. We're in constant communication with them, which is really new. The communication that I've been able to develop by adding members to the team who can reach out and be in touch with other critical players within the system is just, for me, so important. Which leads me to my next new hire was Harpreet Samra. And Harpreet is my supervising social worker, and she actually has added now 30 social workers to her panel. And with those 30 social workers, we have been able to seek a number of mental health diversion grants. We've been, quite successful with the mental health diversion. And I think the last time I checked, Preet had assigned social workers to over 700 individuals' cases, most of whom are seeking mental health diversion. But they oftentimes are assigned to a case in order to just gather background information and prepare a mitigation report. I know someone in the chat is asking about juvenile. So I apologize that most of my comments are directed toward the adult work, mostly because Ron Reyes, as I mentioned earlier, is running the juvenile division. So he would be a better person to talk about the very specifics. If you have questions about juvenile, I can certainly do my best to answer them. That is another incredibly important topic that is getting a lot of attention now as they talk about potentially closing juvenile hall and offering other services to address the needs of our youth. But in any event, getting back to Harpreet's background, quite interesting. She grew up here in California, but got her social worker degree in New Orleans. And she arrived, her father drove her out from Stockton, dropped her off and left with her car. And a couple of hours later, she got word that they were expecting a big storm and they were advising all the students to seek shelter elsewhere. She didn't know anybody. She didn't know the area. She ended up connecting with another student who she had just seen in the walk down from the room, her student housing room, and they agreed that together they would get in a car and drive to Houston, where they took shelter. And so that was the beginning of Hurricane Katrina. But her returned back to New Orleans, and a lot of her early work revolved around working with juveniles who had been impacted by Katrina. And so the first many years of her work was in the juvenile arena and in New Orleans. She then came back to California and was a social worker with the Santa Clara County Public Defender's Office. And a number of our attorneys had mentioned to me that they were familiar with her work. They were familiar with her background. And so when I started to think about adding a social worker program, I reached out to Harpreet, and we made a great connection, and adding her to our team has been a wonderful thing. She's just an incredible human being, and she is so invested and so good at what she does. She has opened the lines of communication, as I was saying earlier, with the folks in the jail, the behavioral health people, the correctional health people. Preet is constantly reaching out to them. They're constantly reaching out to her to identify needs of clients and make sure that nobody's falling through the cracks. So that is great. And then my last person on the slide is Omar Barraza. He is my head of investigations. When I was an attorney in private practice, I used Omar on every case that I could, because he was just incredibly hardworking and organized. And I was lucky to have him on all my serious cases when I was trying homicides and a lot of gang cases. I could always count on Omar to be on top of this investigation, reaching out to witnesses. And so I reached out to him when I took the position and asked him if he would be interested in coming on as my head of investigations, and he agreed. And a lot of his work has involved recruiting more Spanish-speaking investigators, setting up training programs, and just trying to work to make the services of the investigators as available as possible, and as simple as possible. We want our lawyers to use social workers. We want them to use investigators. We are very, very generous with the requests. Anybody who asks for an investigator on their case will be provided one. Same with social workers. If there is a request, we will provide, and sometimes we're reaching out to the lawyers to offer and say, would your case be appropriate for a supervisor, a social worker or an investigator. So I'm very lucky to have the team that I have, and I feel that together we all are able to cover quite a large area of representation, and so that is pretty much all I can tell you about that. We'll move on. How does one become an attorney on the private defender program? We have an application process, and the application needs to be completed, and then the lawyer will submit the application with references and a writing sample. We will check with the references. Oftentimes the people who come to us, we are familiar with them because we've seen them around the courthouse, or they are just known in the community to us. So we have had lawyers who've been former public defenders. My managing attorney, Scott Sherman, is a former public defender. Nicole Lambros is a former public defender. And we have a number of lawyers on our panel who've either retired or moved on because they wanted to go out into private practice, or they wanted just a little more flexibility, a little more control over their own caseload and practice. And so we're always happy to have people who have been public defenders. They add a perspective and a voice to the work that I think is important. We also have former prosecutors, and another group that usually come to us very well trained. They're very familiar with the law. Oftentimes, they were prosecutors in this county, so we know their reputation for fairness. We know their reputation for preparedness and professionalism. And so we would not turn away a former prosecutor who wants to come to the defense side and put their experience and knowledge to work to assist our clients. So that has worked out well for a number of former prosecutors. I myself am a former prosecutor. I was in the DA's office for about 9 years, and then I changed and I was a panel attorney for over 16 years, and then have been on the management team for approximately the last 6. We also will take lawyers who are just out of law school if they come to us with a passion for doing criminal defense, and they demonstrate a willingness to participate in, close mentorship, a training program. We will obviously oversee their work. We will monitor their work closely. Most of the fresh out of law school students were people who had participated in some kind of moot court mock trial and discovered a love for criminal defense work. And so it's actually great to be able to take advantage of that passion and that energy. And we start them out obviously slowly, and we do support and monitor and train them. But we have a really great group of lawyers that have been with us maybe about 2 years. They all kind of came in around the same time, and they're just doing outstanding work, and I'm really proud of them. And I think for me, I like getting lawyers in new, because I just feel that it's a little bit easier to make sure that they're coming to us with a very holistic, client-centered state of mind, and that they understand that the representation here is holistic. And I'll get into that in a minute, but it wasn't always that way. I mean, there used to be lawyers who really just wanted to look at the police report, spot the issues, go in and argue the issues, and weren't as attentive to the client specifically, weren't as attentive to the needs of the client, weren't as sensitive to the background of the client, or what led them there. And that was just the way law was practiced back 20, 30 years ago. But it has slowly evolved so that now I think it's just a much more humane, much more sort of broad, expansive, and I want to say intelligent, but maybe that's not the right word. But I feel like we're just doing a better job of looking at our clients and trying to see them as whole pictures, not just them on maybe the worst day of their life, the day they are accused of doing something that's chronicled in a police report. We try to take each person as a person that comes to us with many of them trauma, many of them with issues that they're struggling with. For instance, you know, again, the mental health and the substance use disorder and all of that. So the cases get assigned out based on experience and ability. So we label our cases as they come in with a numerical system 1 to 6, 6 being the most serious, 1 being the least serious. And then we have categorized our lawyers similarly. So level 1 lawyers can only be assigned level 1 cases, and so on and so forth. A level 6 lawyer can be assigned anything from a 1 to a 6. And oftentimes a level 6 lawyer, for some, you know, reason, personal or otherwise, decides to take a break from doing the most serious cases, and they might ask to be assigned misdemeanors for a while. And we are perfectly flexible and open to doing that, which is, I think, unique to our program, because I think in a more structured office, you go in and you are given an assignment, and you work in that assignment for a period of time, and then you might switch out of it. But the caseloads in a more structured office are also going to go up and down, whether you like that or not. I mean, whether you need a break or not. If you're one of 4 homicide attorneys, but there have been 20 homicides in the county that you work in that year, you're probably going to be responsible for you know, an equal share of those homicide cases. So with us, we tend, as the more serious cases come in, to really evaluate, you know, who are our level 6 attorneys, what have they got going on right now. And what I have done, which is new to our program, is I've started doubling lawyers up on more serious cases. And in large part, that is a mentoring exercise, so that the lawyer who maybe is trying their first serious case can learn from the experience of the more seasoned attorney, and the more seasoned attorney might be able to delegate a fair amount of the work to a lawyer that isn't quite as experienced, but are, you know, just there on the cusp. And so that's a system that has been working very well. And I'm seeing the benefits of that over the last year, and am more and more inclined to allow for that 2 attorney system. Historically, we took the position that it was just one lawyer per case, and that was just the rule. But the truth is, these cases are incredibly complex. The stakes are incredibly high, and it's a lot for one person to manage on their own. And so I want to make sure that the lawyers, when they go into court and they're trying these most serious cases, that they're at the top of their game, that they've gotten some sleep the night before, that they feel confident about the approach that they've decided, you know, is best for the case, that they have someone to, you know, discuss the case with in depth. Another thing I've instituted recently in the last year is what is called an advanced mentor assignment, where an experienced attorney who wouldn't necessarily be considered someone that still needs mentoring and close supervision, just with regard to their skills and their experience, they might have a case where they just feel a little bit like they could use more, more expertise, and so what they can do is they can request an advanced mentor, and then they can get one of the level 6 attorneys added to their case for certain tasks That attorney won't necessarily sit through every court hearing, but they can take advantage of them, and that lawyer will be paid to provide that mentorship. And that's another thing that is working well. So the case teams I've kind of covered, in the sense that I think you understand that when an attorney is assigned to the case, they can really, with just a couple of buttons pushed and a few notes, they can request an investigator, a social worker, expert witness, an additional attorney, as I was speaking about before, either as a mentor. Sometimes it's because they're seeking someone to help write motions. Motions can be critical in some of these large cases, and you know, some attorneys are better at written work and some are better at the courtroom work. And so it makes sense to team up lawyers who have different strengths and provide that good written work, being, you know, argued by the lawyer who's more effective in their courtroom skills. So that is essentially all I have for you on our attorneys and case teams. I've talked throughout the presentation already about holistic representation. And so what is holistic representation? It is, again, trying to approach the representation of an individual with a mindset of trying to understand all that brought that person into the system and all that we have within our control to help them with, to ensure that they don't return back into the system. I'm currently in the process of looking to hire an in-house immigration attorney. If we went back to slide 1, let me see if this is not too distracting. I'm just going to refer you to the case of Padilla versus Kentucky, another United States Supreme Court, which decided in 2010 that criminal defense attorneys have the responsibility to advise clients about negative consequences of a criminal conviction to a client's immigration status. So prior to Padilla, lawyers would oftentimes be of the mindset that, well, they're going to have to go talk to an immigration attorney about that. That is not my area of practice. I don't know immigration law. I can't be responsible for advising them. But as of 2010, you are responsible. So we are responsible. And we have had a contract with the Immigration or Immigrant Legal Resource Center, ILRC. We always refer to them as ILRC. So they are a group of lawyers that are available. We can submit case histories to them via email and tell them, you know, these are the facts of the case. This is the charge that my client is facing, and give them background about the client's status. And then they will respond with a detailed, thoughtful approach to the type of disposition that you would want to seek for the best situation for that individual who may then end up facing an immigration judge. Our contract with ILRC has allowed our lawyers to you know, have that access and get that response from their organization. They're very, very smart and informed, and they know exactly what they're doing. My feeling after observing it for a couple of years is that I believe we will be better served by having an immigration attorney in-house. And so I am in the process of seeking to hire an in-house immigration attorney, and then we'll continue to contract with ILRC for overflow cases, they'll still be an option. It would also be an option for lawyers working with clients who already have a relationship established with an immigration lawyer, for us to assist in paying the bill if it ties into the criminal case. And so we want to make sure that we are not setting people up for a worse situation when they get to immigration court than was possible. So we want to come up with the best resolution of the case for the appearance in immigration court. And sometimes it's counterintuitive for us as criminal defense lawyers. Sometimes the immigration lawyer is able to tell us that, in fact, the charge you view as more serious is a better charge within the immigration analysis. And so there are things that lawyers who just practice criminal defense aren't as informed about. And so it's critically important that they work with an immigration attorney. And I hope to have an immigration attorney in-house on the premises within, I'm hoping by sometime in September. But in the meantime, we do have access to ILRC for that advice and consultation.
Lisa, I
yeah.
just wanted to check, are you close? Because I know we've got some people wanting to ask a few questions, and I don't want to run out of time.
Yes, I mean, I can wrap up the
okay, that would be great, because I know we've already got people just chomping at the bit to ask a few particular questions.
Okay,
thanks.
Sure. So I think I've probably said enough about holistic representation so that you understand that the goal is to try and identify all the different issues and tackle those. The only other thing I would point out is we also provide quite a bit of record clearance. And so a lot of the collaborative courts, as they're going through like a drug court or military diversion, it happens there in the court, in the mental health court. We do record clearance, but we also take calls all day, every day from people looking to have their expungements or record clearance. And we do that, quite frequently throughout the year. We've got quite a large number of expungements we do each year. I will just say briefly that systemic litigation within our county, San Mateo, I talked a little bit about the arraignment calendar, a big issue that has been, talked about for a couple of years now is bail and, whether or not there should be cash bail or not. This is an issue that we have taken on and treated very seriously. And we have currently 2 cases pending before the California Supreme Court on this issue. There is the Harris case and the Kowalczyk case, and the issues in those are whether or not the Constitution, which constitutional section applies in determining whether or not you can deny bail, and also what evidence can be relied upon by a court in making findings during a bail hearing. So it's a pretty big deal to have the cases in front of the Supreme Court, and I'm really proud of the lawyer Marsan Weiss, who fought these cases, brought a number of writs, and these 2 ended up in front of the Supreme Court. So I think this we've already talked about. So yeah, I think if the preference is to go into question and answers, then that's fine by me.
Oh, that would be terrific.
Okay.
And just so everybody, what we want to do is please raise your hand, so that puts me in the queue. I know there have been some questions put into the chat, but let's go ahead and get into the queue. The first one up is Elsa, and then Joanna. And please try and keep it to a specific question and not a story. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And Lisa, thank you for such a fascinating presentation. I think we could all play that back to you now. Lisa, I know that recently there have been a good number of, not even so recently, of youth who are charged in adult court, despite the fact that their supposed crime was conducted when they were 16 or 17. Those the most frequent numbers, I think. And some of us have visited the DA and been told, oh, but if it's a young Hispanic boy and then they just their life is set kind of thing. It's so sad. And I was just stunned to hear that. How do we, how can you guide us? How can we help you stop that practice and get someone who is younger to actually go through the youth system, not the adult system? A lot of those boys get sent immediately to adult prison where they've got not the world's best role models, and that's scary to all of us.
Right. Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that, that is probably one of the great injustices, that we're witnessing at this time is treating our youth as adults and, saddling them with consequences that will last a lifetime and will have an extremely negative impact on what that life, ends up being for them. What we've done is we have taken a very aggressive approach in representing youth at Franklin hearings and transfer hearings. And I personally, make sure that we put our most experienced, aggressive lawyers on the cases where they're seeking to transfer them to adult court. So I have a lawyer, Kevin Nowak, who is just a real standout, who has been successful in some of his efforts to keep youth in juvenile court. We have Ron has added lawyers to the juvenile panel who have come from Santa Clara, and they have experience with, very serious homicides and gang cases involving juveniles. And Alan Cave and Lindsay Nichols, they're both representing two of the youth currently in that situation. So what we have done is we have done a number of trainings on the development of the juvenile brain. We have, in fact, just last week, we had Dr. Ron Minagawa present to our entire panel, and he is a doctor that would be an appropriate expert witness in coming in to explain, the functioning of the juvenile brain and the fact that the prefrontal cortex is the last to develop, and it doesn't fully develop until 25. We've done other trainings with an attorney named Laurel Arroyo, who was with the Alameda County Public Defender's Office, and she is now at the Office of the State Public Defender, but had established herself through juvenile organizations like PJDC as a real leader in the understanding of how to effectively advocate for youth to keep them out of the adult system. So we do what we can to give strong lawyers, to give good training, to educate the court, to educate the DA to the extent possible about the reality of the decision-making process of a 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old. There's science out there to back our arguments. We use that science, we call the witnesses. And so I am confident and proud to say that I think we are providing the best representation we can for those youth and the decision by the DA's office to continue to pursue the transfer of the youth to adult court is something that I do think organizations like yours and other advocates expressing concern about is probably the best that you could do to make it known that you're interested in that topic, make it known that you're interested in not seeing young men sent off to prison, at a young age, where, as you say, they're going to be subjected to experiences and individuals that will forever change their life and their ability to come back into society and acclimate.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank
We'll go through a couple questions really quick. Joanna, I know you've had your hand up.
Thank you so much. So I agree with you completely, Lisa. I think Kevin Nowak is one of the best attorneys in California, and I'm so grateful for his service and for his service to our kids. It's my understanding that both Alan Cave and Lindsay Dazelle were leaving the panel. And so my question to you is, how do we, retain the good lawyers that we have? And how do we go about with all of these cases that are pending, right? How can we replace the quality attorneys that were on the panel handling these cases now that they're leaving? Because that's 2 in a row to leave is a big hit for our panel.
Yeah, I agree. And it is difficult when people move on. And I think that the thing that we're trying to do is we are trying to get the word out to experienced lawyers about our panel, in the sense what I keep emphasizing to lawyers is tell other lawyers about the work that you're doing here, the resources you're being provided. We have tried to keep a fair fee schedule so that people are paid fairly for the work that we're doing. I do a town hall with the lawyers once a month, and we did that last week. And one of the lawyers that's been with us about 2 years, she raised her hand and just said, I just want to tell you that if I had known about this program 10 years ago, I would have been here 10 years ago. I can't believe how supportive the program is for the work. And so what we need to do is get the word out and attract more experienced, dedicated lawyers. So, juvenile, we still have a number of good lawyers, good, strong lawyers. David Avila is up there and ready to take on the work. Kathy Yolkin, so Ron is constantly recruiting as well. He had recruited Alan and Lindsay from Santa Clara. And so I know he will continue to recruit. We continue to try to get the word out and just, we are about to add in September, I think we are adding five new attorneys, all of whom are experienced lawyers, not all in criminal, but all who have reached out to us and demonstrated a real commitment to making the move to indigent defense. And so we're excited to bring them on because they do have a high level of practice, and they are demonstrating a real desire to change their practice to be doing something that they care about instead of civil work, or one of them is at county council. And so Joanna, if you know anybody, send them our way. We are always open to hearing from good, experienced lawyers. It's kind of like everything else right now. There is a workforce shortage that I think is present in a lot of areas of our community, and unfortunately, we're just doing the best we can to keep the good ones we have happy and find more.
Thank you. All right, we got a next question coming from Marshall.
Oh, thank you. That was really clear and informative. Thank you very much. That was really terrific. I'd just like to note that I was involved in the ACLU program that did a little oversight of the PDP over a decade ago, and what you've said is sounds like quite an improvement. I have a million questions, but I'll only ask one.
You can reach out to me and separately too.
Okay. Well, could you tell us a little bit about the caseloads that each of your attorneys have, and like a minimum and maximum? Because my recollection was they were pretty high.
Yeah. And they continue to be high, particularly right now because post-COVID, we are still in catch-up mode. And so despite the fact that our court stayed open, we tried cases all throughout the pandemic. If anybody got a notice for jury duty, hopefully you showed up, because we were picking juries and trying cases. But a lot of people failed to appear during that time as well. And so unfortunately, our caseload right now is probably the highest it's been in several years. Now we have more lawyers than we've had, and I'm continuing to add lawyers. Like I said, we have 5 new lawyers starting in September. It's sort of a constant chase of, we might add 5, we might lose 2 or 3, so what we are doing though is we are doing a more thoughtful and thorough evaluation of caseloads. The system by which we categorize the cases and the trial level of the lawyer is new, and I implemented that with the idea that it's about more than numbers. We have to understand what kind of cases the numbers represent. So some cases don't take as much of the lawyer's time and energy. And if the lawyers are giving those cases a thoughtful review and a thorough review, and they're talking to the clients, and the decision is made to resolve that case for, a deal that seems appealing to the client, then that's part of the system. There are a large number of cases that are going to resolve by plea annually across the country. I mean, that's just a fact of the system, is that not every case goes to trial. But what we have been trying to do is monitor and make sure that nobody is taking on too many very serious high-level cases at once. So we try to carefully monitor the numbers. But the Office of the State Public Defender is about to begin a statewide workload study, and I believe that is going to shed some light on numbers, because part of the problem with setting a caseload limit, there's a couple of problems with it, but one of the problems is nobody has ever really been able to say that this number, 250, that's the most any attorney should represent in terms of misdemeanor cases in a year. But there's a lot that goes into that number of 250. Are they 250 cases that, I explained before, is the type where you might be able to resolve it with a meaningful conversation with the client? The client's interested in moving on and they want to take an acceptable plea agreement. Or is it a case that involves someone with mental health, with, a very complicated defense or a complicated background that you don't want to ignore? So you may end up delaying the case and looking into having them evaluated by doctors, or having them assessed for appropriate treatment in the community. So each case is so unique that it is hard to come up with a firm number. But I am looking forward to the results of OSPD. They hired an organization out of the Southern Methodist University called the Deason Center, and they have hired the Deason Center to perform this workload study. Coincidentally, I hired the Deason Center less than a year ago to come in and evaluate ours. And so I had hired them to come in and evaluate our data collection systems. And so I'm looking to the experts. I'm doing what I can to try and develop meaningful standards. And then we'll respond, as we go on. But I would say right now the caseloads are probably higher than I'd like them to be. But I do expect that once that COVID backlog starts to clear, that those numbers are going to come down.
We're going to take a couple more questions because this is so fascinating, but we are running out of time, so keep it short. Diana, you're up.
So thank you so much, Lisa. When I reached out to you a couple of years ago, it was because a friend of mine was an attorney in a different county and couldn't believe how outrageous it was that San Mateo County operated with a panel when you needed to have a department that was dedicated to your work. And you immediately persuaded me that the panel has more attorneys, has more investigation and other resources than most other counties could provide. So that was that. And I just wanted to make that statement. But this is Democracy for America. We are very active. And several of us have been lobbying the district attorney, for instance, about discontinuing the practice of trying juveniles as adults. What else is it that we can do for you that would promote whatever it is you need to make your job easier, better, more effective, and more of service to our community?
There's two topics that, again, I'm focusing mainly on as I go forward, and that, again, is early representation. I feel like people who are poor end up with a worse case against them because they didn't have the luxury of calling a lawyer, a family lawyer, or a lawyer that they knew of that they could afford to pay to come down like a wealthier client would. So I think to really even the playing field, we need to be able to provide counsel and representation to our indigent clients early on before they start incriminating themselves. They have a constitutional right not to incriminate themselves. And both as a DA and a practicing defense attorney for the past, 30 years, I've seen over and over and over again, the police take advantage of that absence of counsel early on. And, the law allows the police to misrepresent to individuals that they're interviewing. They can lie about the evidence they have against them. And people need to be protected. And I think that early representation is a critical missing component to representation. And then, I think that I'd like to see, perhaps an expansion of the role that we play in the immigration field. I don't know that we could ever take on the representation in court because it's a federal system, and it would be quite difficult for us as a county, based organization to be appearing in federal court. But I would like to do more, and my hope with hiring the on-site, immigration attorney is that person will be able to sort of think outside the box a little bit more and be more available to have conversations with families and really hear their stories, understand their situations, and collect information that will, improve the immigration situation. Sadly, most of our clients will end up in immigration court unrepresented. And so we had a great speaker. She runs the Alameda County Immigration Department. Her name is Raha Georgiani. I heard her speak, and then I brought her in to address our attorneys. And she said, I can't tell you the number of times that I have worked my fingers to the bone to come up with a perfect, plea, a perfect situation for my client. We get it all agreed to, all worked out. And then they've gone into immigration court and the judge will ask them a simple question like, well, did you do this? And then they'll say yes, because that's the human instinct, is to answer the question and be honest. And so all the work that was done going into court is undone with one question from the judge. And again, the individual stands there unrepresented with nobody to say, don't answer that, So immigration and early representation and there was one other thing, but I've lost my train of thought.
Well, Lisa, I want to get Nancy and
Yeah.
Sharon, because we're out of time, but this is so key. So Nancy, if you got a quick question, you're muted.
Thanks so much, Lisa. I'll be quick and maybe feel free to just answer in a sentence or two. Great presentation. Back to the juvenile justice issue, the Juvenile Justice Commission inspection report last November or December found that there wasn't any substance abuse treatment programs or other rehab programs that the kids need. And I know the DA told us that the probation recommendation is a big part of his decision to charge as an adult. So how do you address the challenge for the kids that you're helping if they need these services that aren't available? And please answer just real quick if you can.
Well, it's unfortunately too quick because we don't have an easy answer. Probation really is responsible for providing those services, and unfortunately, I just don't think they're doing a good job of it. So I would love to have my juvenile managing attorney meet with you as well sometime, because he is a member of the board, the PJDC board. I know is so much better informed than I am on the juvenile issues. So I hate to provide you with less than you deserve, but I know Ron would be happy to meet with you and answer all those questions.
That'd be great. Thanks.
And I'm going to take one last question from Sharon. And sorry, Marshall and Elsa, but that's got to be it. Thank you.
So unfortunately, I don't think maybe mine will be a quick question. Mine is more about the diversity of the attorneys that we have going back to the juvenile system, even also for our adult system. What is, if you can quickly, answer in regards to the ratio of our minority attorneys that are helping our minority communities that are incarcerated, more likely our juveniles?
Yeah. That's a great question, and that is an ongoing challenge for me. As I said, with regard to Mitri, he is in charge of recruiting, and I have, recently even been meeting with him to discuss the idea of, just the whole DEI mindset. We need to be recruiting. You need to be going to specialty groups. You need to be reaching out to La Raza law groups. You need to be, finding the Black student unions. We have to seek out the diversity. We have added in the last, I would say, 3 or 4 years, we have been able to add a number of more diverse lawyers to the panel for the, right now we do have 3 African-American attorneys, all really incredibly talented, hardworking attorneys that, it's great to see them in court and doing a great job. We've added a number of Latinx female attorneys in the last couple of years, again, really dedicated, bring a certain, passion and background to the field. So it's an ongoing process, and it is one that I am committed to. I am committed to increasing the diversity and continuing to look for candidates that are, coming to us with backgrounds that might make them a little more in tune with the issues and the struggles of the clients that we're assisting. So does that answer your question?
It's probably a good
Yes, it does.
start.
Yeah. Very good start. I know there's a lot more to it, and I know that was like a long. I know there's more. You know, that we can go more into depth, and I know we have run out of time. So at another time, yes.
And Lisa, I think from all of us, I want to say a big thank you, because this has been fabulous. There's so much to learn. And one of the things that I really want to say that stands out for me is I've seen the public defender in action over 20 years. What I hear from you is so different, such a different picture. And it just means that there's so much change going on, and it's really positive. So I'm really thrilled with all the things that you guys are doing. And as you said, you've given us a couple things that we can work on, and anything you can think of that you want support on from the public, gosh, let us know, because we're really good at that. If it's going in front of the Board of Supervisors, great, tag us.
Great.
So.
That's great to hear. So thank you so much. I appreciate the support.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you for all that you do.
All right. Oh gosh, this has been amazing. And I'm actually going to adjust my agenda, because we did take extra time for this, but I really think that was so important. One of the things I do want to jump to now is talking about a couple of our upcoming events. We already talked a little bit about the Democratic Party picnic on August 12th. That's at Huddard Park. And then Elsa, do you want to talk for a minute about the fixing event on the 16th?
Yes, thank you so much. Susie, do you want me to mention the other DCC event, which is this Sunday first? Or just
that's actually, I've got it in the next group when we
okay,
talk
good.
about volunteering.
Great. Okay, great. On Wednesday afternoon, August 16th, we at Fix in San Mateo County are having our first ever event on the coast, which is such a beautiful place to visit for those of you on this side of the Kill. Those on the other side know well what we've been missing if we haven't been there much. This event starts at 4:30. It is our big party of the summer. We've always had a party in a park or in a church. This is a big deal in a restaurant. We've been given this area by Lenny Mendonça of the Half Moon Bay Brewery. Some of you know the brewery. It is so much fun. And a number of us, in addition to Lenny, are providing lavish hors d'oeuvres. So we highly recommend you come. The bar is a cash bar, up to you. And you will have lots of time to schmooze with each other. We'll see each other in 3D. What a concept. And you'll hear from a few people about what's the latest with Fixin', what are we going forward to. There will also be a small auction there with very fun items to bid on if you want, from wines to dinners to singing telegrams you can send your friends on their birthday, etc. Oh, hikes in the beautiful hills, etc. So we'd love to have you come for that. All the pricing is very reasonable. We only have a $13,000 budget we're trying to fill a few gaps on, and we already have 8,000. So we're not asking a lot there, but mostly it's a fun party and we'll all be together. So we hope you can all come. I'll put a link in the chat.
All right, thank you much. The next thing I'm going to be talking about is volunteer opportunities. And it might only be August of 23, but the election is right around the corner and it's time to start revving things up.
DFA meeting, I can't talk.
One of the things that we've got coming is we have, and hang on, I'm going to share this. Let's see, there we go. We're doing some, with the county Dems, we're doing some voter registration events, and we really need people to help us out. The first one is on the 19th and 20th, is Burlingame on the Avenue. The next coming up is Millbrae Art and Wine. And then in October, we've got San Carlos Art and Wine, which we did last year. And then we'll also do the Pumpkin Festival. And there are probably going to be some other dates coming up too. But what we're really looking at is gathering our volunteer force to do. So we're starting with voter registration because that's something we can do today. But we're going to be having more and more events where we need volunteers. So we're really looking for people to help us out. In most of these cases for the voter registration, we're looking for 2 hours. And these are our Saturdays and Sundays. And it's typically the middle of the day is when we need the most volunteers. So if you're open to volunteering, you can send me an email. You can put it in chat and say you're interested in helping at one of these events. But we're really looking at trying to gather as many people as we can. And now I'm going to turn it back to Elsa for another County Dems event.
Thank you so much. And that event is this very Sunday afternoon. It's in Menlo Park from 3 to 5. It's chez moi. And it really is a party. There will be opulent hors d'oeuvres and sweets, amazing wines, I can say. And again, that is in person. So we will be able to see and schmooze with each other. The purpose also, other than, hi, how are you again, is to lay out that plan that Susie just told you about, but also just to lay out the why behind it. And it's that this is the first time the California Democratic Party has really said, wait a minute, we don't just want to have a message from on high and send it down to voters. We really want to first hear from them. So we're trying to get not only more and more voter registration, which we know we're very good at, but also to hear what's most important to people and not just the big overview words, but what's happening in their area. So all of the phone banking, for instance, that's happening right now is really to listen. That is so smart. And we all know that from our experience too. But the more we can get people early on to do that, the better we can actually get richness from that early listening and inform the candidates of what's most important. So we'd love to have you come party Sunday afternoon. Thank you, Nancy, for putting the other RSVP in the chat. I will add that one next for Sunday afternoon. Please do come. Bring any friends or family you have. If you haven't volunteered often, just come, because you'll hear about the strategy and how well these links hold together, and in turn, how effectively your hour or 2 or 10 are really going to be put to work. So I'll put the link in shortly. Thank you, Susie.
Oh, okay. And Elsa, I got one more for you. You were
Sure.
talking about a voter engagement with jail inmates.
Oh, yeah, I was going to do that.
Oh,
Nancy.
thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
We
Sorry.
know about it. This will be quick because it's not really something that I think our people can volunteer for, but it is exciting. The county elections has a voter education and outreach advisory committee that meets every month. It's called VOC. And they had a special meeting a couple of weeks ago to talk about voter registration and engagement in the jail, because apparently elections said only 60 people from the jail voted in the last election. And for you to know, we have 2 jails, and there's about 500 to 600 people in each one of them. So that's pretty crazy. And so the VOC invited Legal Services for Prisoners with Children, and they're also a group called All of Us or None, that really wants to have people who have a history of incarceration go back into the jail and talk to people who are incarcerated and say, here's why it's important to vote. The nice thing is the sheriff had sent a jail staff there, and the servicing came, who also does work in the jail. And there were some great ideas that came up. They're going to further those up August 16th. People Power, Thrive Alliance are co-sponsoring this along with the elections committee. And it's pretty exciting. I mean, the bottom line is they're talking about getting these, All of Us or None folks who were mostly from the East Bay, who were previously incarcerated, to come into the jail during February before the March primary and register people. And elections suggested they might put a drop box in the jail, the last couple of days of the election, and pick it up there. And the jail person said they just got tablets so they could online register people for CalCare. And even though most of the tablets in the jail don't have internet, these new tablets do that are registering people for Medi-Cal. So she offered that maybe those tablets could be used to register voters online in the jail. And that together with the Dropbox would really help. So it was just great. More to come, but it's not something where they're going to be looking at us for volunteers, but it'd be a wonderful thing for the county to do.
I'm just going to add that the VIOC has been trying to do this for as long as I can remember, 6 years at least, as has Gail been trying to get interactions with the jail. And I don't know whether we can attribute this to Christina Corpus, our new sheriff, or not, but we now have an opening. And I just think that is so freshly exciting for us. So please stay tuned and we'll see if there's a role there. Thanks.
All right. Well, let's head on into some task force reports. Marshall, do you have anything for elections?
Well, as we said before, we're trying to hone down the list, but all of the major battles in California districts for Congress need support. And so we're going to put together a list to provide at our next meeting of all of the key, what we think are key elections to support. In addition, there are a bunch of Senate elections coming up, not only in California but all over, that are really critical. We need to keep the Senate, so we'll be putting a list of that together, as well as a couple of other key House elections around the country that have a good chance of flipping red districts to blue, and we're putting those we're focusing on those as well. So that's what we'll be providing, as hopefully by the next meeting we'll be able to come to a consensus about it.
Okay. Flavia, is there any updates from climate?
Just what we reported last month is that we're working on a few items that we want to take to an in-person meeting with our electeds. And so we went through a process of narrowing down which items we wanted to take to them, and then we're working on the content next. So this is a continuation of what we discussed last month.
All right. Social justice, Diana and Gail. Is Gail on?
No, Gail's not on. I was just realizing that, and I was thinking that I should have checked on her before this. So, in any case, social justice did not meet this month because it was the same night as our gathering. But two of the items that Lisa actually talked about tonight were cash bail and the incarceration of juveniles as adults. So those are two issues that are that we're very concerned about. And of course, Gail always has a list of water and beaver kinds of things too to add to that. But as I said, we didn't have a meeting, so
I see Gail. Gail, do you have anything you want to add?
I didn't. Oh, you did. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with my video, but yeah, no, I don't have anything to report. I know I need to check in with legislators about their reaction to our letters. And I did suggest that at our next meeting, we might possibly consider issues of lunch for students and general food issues as a human rights issue. We might add that to our agenda, but we haven't got the agenda yet.
Sounds good. And back to Elsa for healthcare.
Thank you so much. Susie joined us. Thank you, Susie, so much, with her bright smile last Sunday at the College of San Mateo Farmers Market, where we who are promoting CalCare, which is the equivalent of Medicare for all, but within California, our 40 million population state, where we want to, by the end of this year, by January, actually have gotten 2 bills all the way through our state legislature. Both of them are now a little more than halfway through. We are determined to get this passed through the legislature and through even our friend Governor Newsom this session. We had a fabulous time and collected 92 signatures, which is very high, at the farmers market. Had a lot of good, strong conversations with people who, even if they didn't necessarily know the name CalCare, they knew all about this program to get rid of the mucky, messed up patchwork quilt we have now, as Anna Eshoo calls it, and in turn get a system that all the rest of the industrialized countries have in the world with better care for max half the price. So the more signatures we can, they're not even signatures, it's just their names and emails that we can collect, that is fodder to go to our elected officials. And we don't know where Diane Pappin is coming out on any of this yet. We do know Mark Berman is a tough nut on this, and his staffer last time was the best person I ever went toe-to-toe with. That morning of the vote, she called to say, well, Mark called me to say he would vote for it. Unfortunately, the bill was pulled by the author because he was short 10 votes, but we have 13 new people who are in the legislature now who are very strongly pro CalCare. And granted, we lost a few people who also were, but we really would love your help at the farmers market. So if you can, I'm just going to put my name and number in again. That's easier for me than, I think they've now posted the event. So the next one is on August 19th. We're there from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's the most beautiful setting overlooking the whole bay at the College of San Mateo, right at the junction of 280 and 92, tons of free parking, couldn't be easier to get to. The most beautiful farmers market I've ever been lucky enough to go to. The more people we have helping, and it's just telling people what it is, handing them a flyer and asking them with your clipboard in hand if they'd sign their name so that their legislator knows that they want this to happen. And I'm shocked at how many people do know about it. So it was a very joyous occasion. So come be happy with us. Thank you.
And Flavia, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that I've posted a Peninsula Peace and Justice event on Medicare for All. It's a webinar on August 21st. So the link is in the chat there.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Flavia.
And I had something I was going to say, and now I don't know what it was. Oh, okay. So we're down to, oh, I know what I wanted to ask.
You were going to say how fun it was last Sunday.
Actually, it was the easiest tabling event I've ever had. People were, you didn't talk to everybody. We talked to more people than I've ever seen. And it was just the easiest sell. So it was a really good one. One of the things I wanted to mention, I noticed in the chat, I know we had lots more questions for Lisa. Does somebody have Lisa's contact info that we can put in chat? Because if you have more questions, please send them to Lisa. She's really open to discussions. This is not our first conversation with her. Our social justice task force had her at our small meeting a couple of years ago. And, I think we went almost 2 hours in that. And so trying to keep it to an hour tonight, we blew past an hour easily. But please send comments to her because this was really one of the greatest, occasions. We learned so much today and things that our task forces are really going to be looking at, like early representation. What a great one that we can be pushing for. And expanding the role of immigration. Those are both huge issues, and we could be very, very effective talking to the Board of Soups, going and talking to the DA and saying, these are things that need to be done. So there are things that we can get going there. Are there, oh, I know, I have one more announcement I wanted to cover. It's in the newsletter, but our sister district friends are having a backyard barbecue and blues concert. This is next Sunday, the 13th. And if you go to the sister district website, is probably the easiest, or look on our newsletter. There's a link there to sign up for it. But it's going to be a hybrid event. So it'll be in person. They're also doing it on Zoom. And let's have a little ta-da. We hope to have our September meeting in person and on Zoom. So we're going to go hybrid starting just in September. So are there any other announcements open to the floor? Ashley?
All right. I just would like to bring to your attention this book that has recently been published. This book is a memoir published by our very own Greg Lowe, and it's quite wonderful. It's called Memories from Paris to Stanford, Life, Particles, and Politics. And if you read his first book, you know how easy it is to read. He makes it's almost conversational and full of information. And he is a person who has lived a fascinating life and has a long way to go. So I know it's available on Amazon. I'm not sure where else. Have any of you bought it somewhere else? I know a number of you bought it already. Did you all get it?
You can get it at, you will be able to get it at Kepler's, at the Stanford Bookstore, and probably at Books Incorporated.
Wow. Okay, excellent.
Thank you very much, Ashley.
Well, you're welcome. I've read about half of it now, and it's
You haven't read about yourself in it yet.
I haven't gotten to me yet.
Well, you will.
It's really cool, Gregory. Very fascinating. I'll have more comments. Yeah.
And I think it would be fun to have a Greg Lowe party also, where we gather and we can chat with you about it, Gregory. You can hold forth with us.
Okay.
We'll talk to you about that later.
Thank you.
In person.
And I just want to open this up now, because I think one of the things that might be on a lot of our minds is the latest indictments. And so I want to open up the floor if anyone wants to talk about it. I had planned to talk about this earlier and got sidetracked because we were doing more questions with Lisa. Greg?
All right.
Yes. The whole development of the last 24 hours is very encouraging. But what I'm trying to figure out, and maybe our election task force can think about this, is how is it possible that with all these things happening, that he can still run for president, and that the 14th Amendment is not kicking in?
Oh, but he's innocent until proven guilty. You know, you can't take the 14th Amendment without having him been found guilty. That's why they're trying to get a speedy trial. You know, that's the goal. Yeah.
Okay.
And he seems to have a good judge for you know, for that purpose. Yes.
Yes. Chunko.
Yeah. Anything more? I kind of thought that might be Elsa?
But I just mentioned that my sister pointed out that all three judges in all three indictment cases are Black women.
Oh,
double whammy. Is that not fabulous?
Right.
we all said in reply, one person wrote back, gee, I'd love to be a fly on the wall to see that reaction. And someone else said, oh no, there'd be spaghetti all over you. I had said ketchup, but but then my final, I will add this, isn't it sad that we have to be so excited about this? Because isn't it sad we ever let him into office in the first place to wreck so much? Or
well.
actually to unleash so much. Sorry, Marsh. Because to me, the genie's going to be hard to put back in the bottle once he has said, by the way, all you white supremacists, that's okay to think that way. Now go out and do something about it. That's the tough part, I think. Gregory.
No, I'm done. I'm sorry. I tried to.
Oh, there we go. Go ahead, Marshall.
Yeah, I mean, my comment has nothing to do with what we just discussed. It has back to the speaker. I would be curious to hear comments about the relationship with the new sheriff. And it sounds like she mentioned a couple of times, and I inferred from it that it's really an improvement, but it would be nice to get some sort of follow-up. So.
And is her issue more with the DA, given her role, or is it with the sheriff?
No, the DA, yeah.
But everything she said, Marsh, is up our alley. And I was wondering from Paul and from Johanna, have you spoken with her before, or do you mostly speak with the people who are defending the youth? And how early and often can we talk with Lisa about your 9-point plan to get through? Because she should be powerful with the Board of Supervisors.
Well, I think it would be reasonable, say, in 6 months or some reasonable amount of time, to ask her to come back without telling us the structure of the PDP, but to just have a Q&A.
Yeah, and with her. Paul's about to talk, but with her team that work in the youth arena. Paul.
Yes,
Paul?
no, I have never met with Lisa, so it was very interesting listening to her perspective on different parts of the criminal justice system. But more interesting was her relationship with the sheriff that she mentioned, that it had dramatically improved, and that she definitely pointed to the programs that the sheriff has created, and also even spoke about the mental health community members that lack space that the sheriff is responsible for today. But there was no mention about our youth facilities, and that's what was most alarming to me. Once again, we have this population that is the most vulnerable, that really relies on us to advocate for them because they have no agency, that she would focus on the sheriff and the improvements made there, but completely jump over the juvenile issues. Because again, we have several civil suits right now against the probation department, against the district attorney's office for sexual attacks against our children. And so I was hoping that she would speak more of the reforms and the support that her office would have for the commission oversight work that we're doing. And I did type in my question because she did highlight her relationship, how it improved with our newly elected sheriff. So I wanted to ask her if she supported oversight because the sheriff is having more and more interactions with our youthful population. Like, they arrest these youth in unincorporated areas. They supervise these youth when they reintegrate. They have the contractor responsible for feeding our youth. And this is the one department that lacks oversight. And they have a stake in our youth rehabilitation. And I think it's important that with the trajectory of abuse that our youth have gone through in our institutions, that we have some form of oversight over every department that is dealing and interacting with our youth. So I was poised to ask her that question, but it got tight this evening, and I really enjoyed her presentation, the mechanics of her office and how she is operating and managing it. But yeah, I think a great point that Marshall brought up was that we should have a follow-up here, because I'm interested in knowing what her position is on oversight for our youth and what her office is doing to maybe establish that same working relationship that she highlighted with the sheriff, with our chief of probation, who she was put on notice this evening, is lacking the programs that are needed and that are these kids are being sentenced to fulfill that we don't have.
So Paul, that's the first meeting you are going to set up, right? With her, and bring any of us who, you know, who raise our hands, or if you want to. She sounds as though once it's raised to her, she becomes aware of it and she does more about it. So
Yeah, and she did mention, you know, that the person that's in charge of the juvenile part would be the person to talk to. Yeah,
Yeah,
she
but
said
she
that.
was not the expert. I'm going to go to Ashley.
Yes, going back a little way, I just want to point out a reframing of something that Elsa said, that the next time we meet with Lisa, it would be, you know, no presentation, just Q&A. And I was thinking, well, yeah, that's a conversation. So it'd be lovely to have another conversation with her. And we should make sure that Paul is there for sure.
I have a question.
Okay.
Simple question. What's the definition of indigent?
Of what?
Of indigent.
good one. She kept using that word.
Yeah, that is a community member that does not have the financial capacity to hire defense, that it becomes the duty of the state or the county to furnish that community member with proper legal defense.
Okay, it has nothing to do with mental ability.
No, the indigent is all economics. So the underserved, the impoverished, the displaced, many of the community members that are charged with crimes really lack the ability to hire legal defense, and so that's when the private defender will step in and provide.
Okay, that's very simple. Thank you for your answer.
Yes, no problem.
And that should apply to bail also. That's so interesting to tie the two together.
And that was one of the things that Lisa did mention, was that, you know, bail is one of the issues that they're working on too. So there's another good point of collaboration for our social justice task force, if not the whole club. So.
And I gotta say, my hand isn't up, but I gotta say, I still wonder why there are that many people in the jails and why they're there. And has the number gone down at all? Because presumably there have been reforms making it illegal to charge excessive bail. So presumably all these people are really too dangerous to be released awaiting trial. Somehow I find that questionable.
And the majority of them have mental health issues. And we all know that the biggest mental health institutions in the country are the jails and the prisons.
That was nice to hear that was such a focus for the private defender program. So, all right, it is after 9 o'clock. So I'm going to call time and say thank you all. It has been a fabulous evening. And we could have gone on for another 2 hours easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it when we've got an evening that the speaker just keeps us going like that. All right.
Yeah, great meeting. Thank you.
Thank you all for attending, and have a wonderful evening, and hope the rest of the month, hope August is a good one.
And we'll see you.
Okay.
See you in person, maybe in September.
Yeah, see you this Sunday afternoon too. That the RSVPs in the chat, or just
and then in Half Moon Bay on August 16th.
Yep.
Yes. and at the 19th in the Farmers Market, a beautiful San Mateo, and there's another one just after that.
The
Oh,
picnic
on the
on the 12th.
21st.
You guys
Yes.
need to support the picnic on the 12th. at
Oh, yeah.
Upper
Oh,
Park.
look at August. This is vacation.
August is booked.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
county Dems picnic on the 12th is really going to be fun. People
That's
should
what
sign up.
Diana.
By the way, they said
Yeah.
if you can sponsor it, if you're an alternate or something, the club that has the most sponsorships is going to win a little prize or recognition. So I sponsored it and gave DFA as this. The group.
Nice.
Okay. Remind us, what's the lowest you can be a sponsor?
I can't remember.
I think it's $250.
No,
Yeah.
no, I did 100.
No,
I think
it's
it's
like
50.
$50. No.
Yeah, I
What?
did 100.
Oh,
All right.
So
I'm
Yeah,
saying good night.
Good
night.
night. Sponsors. Good night, everyone.
Elsie can tell us how many from this club. Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Later.